Welcome to Lepora Games. I am Lepora, and this is our series on Dyson Sphere program. We will be doing a multi-episodic view of the game, kind of take you through some of the basics, work you up into the mid-game, and we'll kind of just see where the series goes from there. I'm going to kind of let people lead the way as far as what they want to see and what they want to get out of this. Dyson Sphere is an early access program, kind of a bit of a mashup between Factorio and Satisfactory. Factorio being sort of the two-dimensional view of the world. Factory building, you've crash landed on a planet and the goal is to build enough resources and build enough of a factory to launch you back up into space. Of course, there's other ways to play the game too, and other mods and expansions and things that have kind of changed the basic premise, but that's sort of the original storyline. And then you've got Satisfactory, which is three-dimensional, very much like sort of Ark Survival type view of the world, where you start again with very limited resources. And you've been thrown here, though, by a multi-conglomerate, big, huge space corporation. And your goal is to rape and pillage every natural resource from this planet and send it back to the mothership. So take that three-dimensional world and a little bit of the two-dimensional factory building and logistics management of the Factorio game, mash them together, and then throw in a gentleman by the name of Freeman Dyson. Now, who's Freeman Dyson? Freeman Dyson is the gentleman who created the, what's the best way to describe it? The thought experiment of the Dyson Sphere. The Dyson Sphere is, according to Wikipedia, a hypothetical megastructure that completely encompasses a star and captures a large percentage of its power output. The concept is a thought experiment that attempts to explain how a spacefaring civilization like us might meet its energy requirements once those exceed the planet that we're currently on in terms of its natural resources. And so the idea is that the human race, or whichever spacefaring race this would be, would build a megastructure to basically surround the entire star. And if you could imagine like just solar panels lining the inside of this structure all the way around the star, converting as much of that energy from the star out into electrical energy that could then be used by the civilization living outside of the Dyson Sphere. That's essentially what it is. You'll have seen this in like Star Trek, I believe, talks about Dyson spheres. There's probably a few other science fiction television shows as well that sort of mention it or make mention of it. In this first episode, we want to just take you through some of the very, very basics: how to get around, how to pick a planet, where you start, and what the solar system looks like, and how to find natural resources, that kind of thing. And we'll probably take you all the way up to mining and storing of that resource. And then in episode 2 is where we'll start on sort of the basic fundamentals of automation and what do you need to look for to start automating your factory. So without further ado, we're going to head over to Dyson Sphere program here, and we're going to select new game. What you're going to see here is that in the new game screen, you get the option to put in a seed, a cluster seed. This is essentially a starting point for the map. If you are playing with friends and you guys want to play in a common world and kind of see how each other does, the starting seed will be the same no matter whether you're on his computer or your computer or where you're starting. So it kind of just gives you this known finite number of resources and things to start with. See where you kind of go from there. So I've picked a map seed here that I'm going to use for the tutorial series. It is 52894450, and I will include that in the notes down below here in the YouTube channel. And we're going to start with 64 stars and a resource multiplier of 1. When I started playing this, I bumped it up to 1.5 just to see if that would help me from a starting perspective to do better or speedier or kind of get further into the science quicker. And what I found is it doesn't seem to really matter. I mean, you can increase that and yeah, you won't have to leave your home planet for quite some time, but what's the downside of leaving your home planet? You'll find out a few episodes in once we start talking about some of the other natural resources that occur in the solar system or in the universe. So we'll start the game with this particular seed. And we'll kind of just play through some of this. So I'm just going to turn the music down a little bit here while we listen to some of the introductory video here.
To the actual universe.
The actual universe.
You may find it's different from our homeland. Should you be able to adapt to the laws of physics in a short time, I am your advisor and will help you through this mission.
Cool sun graphic. Very much like how I'd picture that flyby to look.
Everything here is yours. As one of Cosmo and the pioneer of the Dyson Sphere program, you will explore this cluster step by step. By using the resources here to construct the Dyson Sphere to provide energy for the center brain to maintain homeland, starting from scratch. I have chosen a designated planet for you to start the mission, which has necessary resources for initial development. Now please drive the space capsule to the planet.
So I have tried to land on other planets or to fly away from here, but it just doesn't let you. So I'm just going to speed towards this planet here. And the faster I can crash land, the better. Again, doesn't matter where you try to crash land. It's still going to place you wherever it is that's your starting location on that planet. And now we've landed.
This is Icarus, a lightweight industrial mecha with powerful functionality. You can use the arrow keys or right-click on the destination to control its movement. In this mission, you will manipulate Icarus to travel beyond the stars and create miracles. The designers of this software still have a little bit of work to do on some of the translations. Right-click on it to recycle.
So you can see here that when we mouse over some of these different natural resources that you see on the screen here, you kind of get a little yellow ring that forms around it. And you can see what the resource is. So we're just going to right-click on that. It'll walk us over to it, and it'll harvest that resource. And it's the same with trees, the same with the foliage, the same with the little small rocks that are around here. If you hold down Shift and you click around, it'll actually let you sort of walk them around to various different resources here at the starting area. Now, the one that I just happened to click on first here happens to be iron ore, which normally you don't start with such a small vein of iron ore right off the bat. It's usually quite large, like this coal vein down here, or even this copper vein down there. But that is our starting iron deposit. So he'll literally sit here and harvest iron until you tell him to move, or this node runs out, in which case he'll head around to the other ones. We don't necessarily want him to do that. And the reason being is that it would be extremely boring to sit here and watch him collect, 3 million or so. Well, I don't even know. What is it? 100,000, 34,000 resources one at a time as we're waiting here for him to finish.
Any technology research. Click the technology tree button at the bottom right of the screen to open the technology tree and activate a research.
So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to finish collecting a few basic resources here, just from close to the pod where we landed. This will also clear us a little bit of a place to build for our initial factory layouts and stuff like that. But I won't take up too much of the time here doing this. This is some of the stuff you'll kind of have to clear out of the way just as you're starting your thing. The reason that I want to collect some of it, though, is just to show you here that when you hit the letter C on your keyboard off the bat, this opens up your fuel chamber. The other way you can get there is the mech panel here, which is this button down at the bottom right. And you can see that in the fuel chamber, he has nothing. So at some point here, his power is draining down here at the bottom, and it's going to get to 0, and he'll barely be able to move, if at all. So what I want to do is I want to toss some of this organic material here into his fuel chamber, and that will help recharge his battery. Now, how do you know what is what when it comes to fuel? Well, any item that you hover over here is going to come up with a little piece of information around what is that? What is it for? What is it built in? How can you use it? And what you'll see is that anything that's considered a fuel that your mech can harness or use to recharge his battery will show up as a fuel type. It'll tell you whether it's chemical fuel or there's chemical fuel, there's plasma type fuels, there's a couple of different genres of fuel, but anything there that has that energy with a megajoule rating is going to be fuel. And the more megajoules that you see there, or kilojoules as you kind of go up the scale, the faster it will recharge your batteries and the more energy ultimately that you'll be able to get out of that particular piece of stuff. And you can see that there's the fuel chamber generation is minus 10%. So it's whatever that level of energy is, less the 10% is kind of the speed that it'll kind of work at. So what we'll do is we'll grab some of this wood and we'll chuck it in. It always goes from right to left. So whatever you've got in this particular component, it's going to use that stuff up first before it moves on to the other fuel types. So we'll load up some of this into our mech. I kind of want to just switch this around because this is the chintzy stuff. It kind of goes quickly. And then what we'll do is we'll come down here and harvest essentially our landing pod. In harvesting the landing pod, we'll get a few larger batteries that we can use, as well as a few other resources.
Etc. In the meantime, hold down Shift and right-click to give a series of commands.
So you can use this right click to move yourself around the map.
Click the inventory button in the lower right corner.
You also can use WASD, similar to most first-person games that you'll play, to kind of move around the map. When you want to start building things, or you want to start looking at your inventory, the E key opens up your inventory. You can also open up your inventory from down here. It's the little box here.
Hold down mouse middle button drag to rotate the angle of view, or slide the mouse wheel to zoom in and out.
This is just telling you about the mouse wheel. So when you zoom right into your mech. If you hold down the middle mouse button, you can kind of rotate the camera around the world, see what things look like from his perspective, or you can zoom all the way out and kind of control him from up here. Very similar to sort of a Command and Conquer, like the Command and Conquer games where you're kind of in a third person view in a 3D world. I enjoy this style of play. It doesn't seem to bother me much at all. And then the last piece here from a moving and manipulating things perspective is the build menu. So the F key is the build menu. And this shows all the things that you can build. So at the moment, I have no buildings that I can build, but I can build some components. And ultimately, what I want to start building is the stuff that is going to allow me to unlock the tech tree. This game has a tech tree, very much like, what are some other games? Civilization. Factory also has a tech tree, so does Satisfactory. All of these builder style games sort of have these tech trees that allow you to build and unlock technologies to further enable you to do bigger and better things. In this game, you press the T button, just like with most, to bring up the tech tree. And you'll see that there's a couple of different sections here. So first section here that we've got is the tech tree. There is really only one starting quest that you can do, which is to unlock electromagnetism. So we'll activate that. And then what we're going to do is just add a couple more to the queue here that we're going to need very quickly thereafter. So once we've got this, it's unlocking some basic power generation with the wind turbine. It's also unlocking power poles, which we need to send the power around our planet, and then miners as well that we can then put on those resource nodes to extract the resources and send them down a conveyor so that they can be turned into something. So with that being said, logistics is the next, obvious one that we need, which is going to unlock for us belts. what they call sorters, which in every other game is sort of an inserter or a factory arm to pull things on or put things onto, or take things off of or put things onto a belt, as well as a basic storage box that you can throw things into. I'm just going to turn up a little bit of the music here again, just so we've got some background noise. And the last thing that we want to do is we want to add some smelting in here and the assemblers, because you'll need to be able to take your stuff and melt it down into ingots, and then you'll need to be able to assemble it into gears and other things. There are a lot more items here in this tech tree, and as you unlock different pieces of it, it'll expand and give you access to more and more technologies and things within this one. But the one thing that's unique here in Dyson Sphere is the upgrades menu. So in here, this is where you can actually, you sort of do upgrades to your ability to see the universe. The further down this you go, the more resources and things you can see from further and further away. Then you've got the mech upgrades themselves. So these are the ones that will give you larger batteries in your mech, or make you move faster, or give you some more inventory, things like that. As well as some of the things around the Dyson Sphere. So these allow you to sort of interact with the physics properties of your world, I guess is sort of the way I would describe it. Solar sail life, for example, unlocks the length of time that a solar sail will stay in the air and collect solar energy before it dies and falls to its death in the star. And the longer that this can stay up, the more it will generate before it needs to be replenished. And that's sort of one of the unique early game features of the Dyson Sphere, is that sort of you have to keep shooting stuff up there in order to keep the electricity going until you actually are able to build the sphere structure itself. So just sort of an interesting feature where, you know, if you're not constantly producing at a specific rate, you'll actually lose the ability to generate electricity, which then diminishes your ability to mine and produce and all of that kind of stuff. Then you also get things like solar ray energy dissipation. So this basically increases the amount of electricity you're getting from a solar array. The further up you get, the more efficient your transmission efficiency is, and then therefore the more electricity you're getting out of the sphere itself. And then you'll see that it unlocks some things like the vein utilization, so it takes less veins to put the same amount of stuff onto a belt, which just increases the amount of mining speed essentially. Research speed increases as well, and as well as sort of the different drone capacities for the different pieces that you've got in the game. These are the types of things that are also unlocked in the technologies menu. So beyond that, this is where we start now talking about what are we going to build. Well, I'm going to harvest just a little bit of copper here while we do the first building. We picked for our first research the only one we had the option of, and you need to create 10 magnetic coils. So I'm going to harvest a little bit of copper just to backfill while we're building those, but we're going to select this and we're going to increase the quantity that we want to 10, and we're going to say go ahead and build that. And so what it's doing here is it's taking that copper and that iron out of your inventory, it's smelting it into the various components that are required to create this electromagnet. The base pieces for this is some copper and a magnetic disc, a magnet, I guess. And so the magnet itself is just created right from the raw ore. So iron is being turned into magnets, and copper is being turned into ingots first, and then the ingots combined with the magnet are then being turned into magnetic coils. And your mech is kind of doing that behind the scenes. And what you can see is we've hit the 10 for that research type. We unlocked our electric power poles and our miners and such. And now we're on to the next technology. So it wants us to create 10 gears. So we'll click on the gear. We'll increase our quantity to 10 and we'll build those. And then also 10 of the electronic circuits, which we will do this way. Now, once we've got this next piece, we will be able to build our first miners. and we'll be able to put those down on these resource nodes. And then the goal there will be to just mine as much out of this little patch as we can, and get it going onto some belts and into some storage for us, so that we can then go on to start building, or continue building, I guess, the rest of our factory. I'm just going to go up here and grab a little more iron while we're doing that, because we'll need it here as soon as these are finished their construction. 3, 2, 1. And now we've got enough to build our miners. So we will go in here. We will hit the buildings, and now you can see we've got our miners, we've got our sorters, we've got our belts, our Tesla towers, which is the power poles, and our wind turbines. So we're going to need a couple of wind turbines. We will start with those. We'll build 5 of those. And then what we will do is we will build some power poles, and we'll build 5 of those. I always keep finding I have to keep cranking these up to 10. It's easy to forget, and then you get onto one and you're building, and you're like, why am I not getting enough of these? And it's like, oh, you forgot to increase your quantities. You can just do it one at a time like this, and then it stays. So it remembers that now. If I go back to one where I've done it, yep. Once we've got the power poles and the wind turbines, we're going to need some belts. So we'll build 10 of those. We are also going to need some sorters. So we will build 10 of those as well. And I think what we're going to start with is we're going to mine some of the iron, some of the copper, and some of the coal. So we'll just need 3 of these storage things to start. And then we will build our miners. So while some of that is building, we'll just show you the basics of how you place some of this stuff. So the first thing we need to place is some power generation. They give us these wind turbines to start. And so I'm just going to head sort of down here a little ways to this section of the map. And I'm going to start placing these wind turbines just kind of as close together as it will let me go, and kind of keep them just on the straight part of the grid here. And one more looks like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we'll leave all of those out, and we will bring our Tesla towers. So I didn't really explain what I was doing here. The build menu is all down here at the bottom, and they've kind of done this in a really cool way that makes it super easy to build. So if I want power, I hit the number 1 key. And if I want the first item in that list, I press F1. And now I've got that in my inventory here, just waiting for me to start building. And I just click to drop it where I want it on the grid. And away it goes. This is sort of unique from some of the other games that we've played, in that the stuff down here, you kind of have to click into the menu and navigate your way through, or you find the stuff on your build menu and drag it down there, or drag it from your inventory to kind of create a shortcut menu down here. This is a unique way of doing the menuing system, and it works really well. Sure makes it easy to get to the different components that you're going to use quickly. What I'll mention is, I don't know if you just saw that right there. When I placed this tower down, there was a tree right next to it that it destroyed in the process of creating that tower. One of the things that does not happen in this game, and it's kind of it's a blessing and a curse in some ways. It's a blessing in that you don't have to fill up your inventory with useless stuff that you're maybe or maybe not going to use. You can use it in the early game, but in the later game it becomes less important. But what it does, though, is it means that all these stones and all of these trees that are out here that you were picking up earlier, if you don't harvest them, you don't get them. So there's literally nothing you can do other than walk around here and harvest all of these things to gain these resources. You can't just simply go and put out, a bunch of buildings and stuff, and then it'll automatically clear those resources for you. It literally doesn't do that at all. It'll just stamp over top of them, and those things are gone. So in that regard, it's always a good idea to sort of forage and sort of get rid of all of the materials around your base that you are kind of in your way of building, just so that you get to keep those resources and you don't lose out on them. So we're just going to clear these away from the ore patch here, just so we've got a nice healthy size ring around it. And you'll see why in a moment. Let's hop back in here and just see if we've got the next batch for our science there. We can keep that going. 10 of those and only 5 of those. And we ran out of iron was the resource that we were short of. So we'll whip back over here, and this is where we'll put our miners on first. So we've got 2 miners built already. And so what we're going to do is we're going to place these so that they harvest as many of these nodes as humanly possible. If you go too far one way or the other, your guy will turn red, or he won't be grabbing all of the nodes. So if we can put him on here like this so that he'll reach all of them. And then if we hit the R button, it'll turn 90 degrees with each R press, essentially. And then we'll put this guy exactly opposite him. Well, yeah, we know that. We haven't brought power up here yet. That's our next step. The game is helpful sometimes. Sometimes. So the next thing we'll do is we'll just grab our last couple of power poles here, and we'll put a power pole right in the middle so that we can power those miners. You'll see that right away they start mining. They've got their little spinny things going on the top of the miner. And what they're doing is they're mining into their own hopper. So inside the hopper here, there's a certain amount of local storage that is a bit of a buffer that builds up. And as soon as you hit 50, poof, it stops. Stops using electricity, shuts itself down, and until you come by and actually click on that and take those and put them into your inventory, it will stay idle. So super fast way to get 50 or 100 resources, but the buffer is pretty limited if you're doing rather large builds. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to build a couple more miners, because what we ultimately want to do here is we want to have as many miners on this little patch as possible, just so we can clear it away quickly, because this slightly thicker line here is actually the equator of our planet. You can see that if you look at the globe view down here, that we're kind of right at the center horizontal axis. And if you kind of zoom out and rotate the world around a little, you can see that as you get closer to the bottom, the grid lines get closer together. And so the pole will be somewhere around here. There'll be another pole up near the top. That's just a little bit harder to see with our rotation here, but that's the North Pole there. And again, north or south, I guess, is kind of arbitrary at this point, because we don't really have a compass to tell us which one of those is actually north or actually south. They're just polar opposites from wherever they're at right now. What we will do is grab these last couple of miners, which should be done any moment now. And we'll pop out a few more power poles over to where the copper is. Oh, we don't have enough for that. Just bear with me here for a minute. We'll mine a little bit of copper, I guess, in the meantime, because we're going to need that. Now, the good thing about the power situation here in this game is that wind is always blowing, so you don't have to worry about sort of fluctuations in terms of the amount of power that you're generating with those wind generators. There's a slow, steady, constant wind or constant breeze always on this planet. And so you'll always have sort of a fundamental base load of electricity from those wind turbines. You progress pretty quickly into some of the more advanced power technologies, so it's not a huge deal. And eventually there is solar and solar batteries and things that'll help you charge up and keep that charge going overnight on your planet while you're producing everything. Okay, that's enough of that. We'll come down here and we'll just harvest a little bit of coal while we're waiting. And we'll queue up. I think we've already queued those up. Yeah, we got 3 of those storage things already. We've already got the inserters. I think we're good for just about everything else except for our belts. Looks like our mech is depleting his energy again, so we're gonna top up the hopper here. And we will set a bunch of these to build. You can never have too many of those belts, let me tell you. It's one of the first things that we'll automate once we've gotten into episode 2 here and we've started talking about the automation. We should now have, though, our extra miners, so we will get those on here and pull as many of these resources out as we can. There's not really a way to get more on this side. We're just going to get a small smidgen out of this one. But what we will do next is we will grab some belts and we'll come out of each of these.
Determine the starting point and the end point of it. In addition, use the up arrow key to lift up one level and use the down arrow key to drop down one level after the conveyor belt is lifted. Press keypad 0 to reset the construction height of the conveyor belt to the ground. If you don't want the conveyor belt to be attached to the building, you can try holding down the shift key.
So essentially what they're telling you about there is that in this game, because it is in 3 dimensions, is that you can you're not just stuck with building flat right to the surface of the ground. If I want to build that up a level and build actually over top of the existing one that I've got here, I can simply put that down, stretch my belt across, and it will build a belt that is now up in the air, sort of stacked on top of the one that I've already built, which makes a lot more flexible building options as you go. Now, if you built that in error and you need to delete it, you can hit the X key and you can individually remove these. Or if you're sitting on an item and you want to delete the whole stretch of it, you just hold down Shift and it'll chain whatever thing is connected to it all the way down until there's some sort of a termination, whether it be a sorter or whether it be a splitter. It will delete basically the whole shooting match all the way down to that far end of the belt. And then what we will do here is I sort of built this out into a square so that we could put one of these storage bins in the corner. And we could hook up an inserter to each of these. And then we just need a power node in the corner here to be able to kind of bridge this whole area. When you place these Tesla towers, you can see that circle that forms around it. That's the circle of influence. Anything that's inside that circle will be powered from that tower. Anything outside of that, obviously, you need to stretch another tower until you get closer to those things. So this Tesla tower here is just enough to encompass all 4 of those miners, which is good. And those miners are now just going to mine into this storage bin while we work on the rest of our factory. What we'll do is a similar situation up here in the top corner, where we'll grab some of these and we'll just pop out the door of that one. And we will pop out the door of this one. And we'll stick one of our Tesla towers in the corner, just like we did last time. And a storage bin. And some inserters that'll just grab this stuff off the line and bring it into the storage bin. And then we'll basically take this same sort of build and we'll stamp it over top of the copper. And we'll stamp it over top of a chunk of the coal. We obviously can't go all the way around the coal. We'd have a huge build to do that. But the goal in this early game is to get rid of this copper patch and this iron patch as quickly as possible so that we can start building our factory in this area. If you look, we kind of have water stopping us going that way, and we've got water stopping us going that way. But from where the best place to start building is literally in this strip right below the equator, right where we run into the miners on this side, and we run into the copper, and we build through here. That's sort of our initial starting place where we want to have our factory piping all of its material to start building. So we need to clear these ore patches out of the way relatively quickly. So we're going to have it mine into these buckets as quickly and speedily as it can. What you can see is that those arms are pretty slow. They don't keep up. It's not like one arm pulls off at the same rate as the belt goes. And so what you can actually do is you can increase the speed by just adding 2 more of those in there. And now you've sort of maximized. It's still not pulling at the full rate of the belt, but at least you've maximized the speed with which it's pulling into the storage here. I'm a big fan of trickling things, even if you're not building at full capacity, at least trickling what you can into some kind of storage or setting up the automation, even though you don't have the full potential of the resources yet, and then just scaling things up. That way you're always building a small amount of every resource. So in this particular situation here, when we start talking about automation, one of the first things that I'm going to start looking at is how do I start piping this stuff into a smelter as quickly as possible and smelt as much of it as I kind of can. And then what else can I build with this? So do I put half of those resources into smelting and the other half into building magnets? Or, what other items are there that we can build from the raw iron ore? You can see that we've now caught up to the speed of the belts. It's now flowing out of here at whatever its max rate is from that particular miner. And it's now being fed into the storage bins as fast as it can. So that is episode number 1. How to start mining, how to get stuff storing into storage bins. When we start off with episode 2, you'll probably see that I will have already built our mining around the copper nodes. I've probably set up something around the coal nodes, and there's also a stone node that I think is just up here. This guy right up at the top of the screen here is stone. So we'll also set up some miners on this stone node here to be collecting us some stone in the meantime as well. And then we will start the episode with those miners in place, and we will start talking about how to start automating some of this stuff and building components and sort of scaling things up from there. So thank you very much for hanging out with us today. Really appreciate you guys tuning in for this first episode of Dyson Sphere, and I hope that we can start to turn this content into something a little bit better and bigger. You'll see that right now what I'm using is some of my Twitch overlays. You got the latest follower, latest subscriber stuff down there. I'm just in the process of working with my designer who helped me with my Twitch overlays to adapt some of these a little bit better for YouTube, so that when we're doing this content that we can have a similar look and feel. We want this to be a bit of a branded experience for people. They can come over and watch some of the Let's Plays that we do for Dyson Sphere. It'll probably be on the weekends, be doing some Saturday streams or Sunday streams as the week may allow. And During those streams, people will be able to interact with me, help me with my build, tell me what I'm doing wrong, so that when we build the YouTube content during the week, we'll be able to adapt that stuff and show you guys without all the mistakes that we made. So without further ado, we'll end this episode, and we will hope that you guys tune in for episode number 2, which will be released here just another day or so. Thank you very kindly for hanging with me. If you want to come and see me at Twitch, I will make sure that my Twitch link is down in the bottom. If you like the content, a subscribe or a like or a follow, whatever platform we happen to be on with this content, would be appreciated down below. And in the meantime, keep your sticks on the ice, and we'll see you again soon.